Ivan Petrovich Pavlov, a Russian psychologist, was the discoverer of the classical conditioning theory of learning. He won Nobel Prize in the year 1904 on his research on digestive process. He was basically interested in studying the process of gastric secretion in dogs. His finding brought about the revolutionary change in the field of learning. Classical conditioning focuses on the learning of involuntary emotional or psychological responses such as fear, increased muscle tension, salivation, or sweating. These sometimes are called respondents because they are automatically responses to stimuli. Through the process of classical conditioning, humans and animals can be trained to react involuntarily to a stimulus that previously had no effect or very different effect on them. The stimulus comes to elicit or bring forth the responses automatically. Classical conditioning was discovered in the year 1920. In one of his experiments, Pavlov kept a dog hungry during the night and then tied him on the experimental table, which was fitted with certain mechanically controlled devices. The dog was made comfortable and distractions were excluded as far as possible. Pavlov kept himself hidden from the view of the dog but was able to view all the movements of the dog by means of a set of mirrors. Arrangement was made to give food to the dog through automatic devices. Simultaneously with this act of offering the food to him, a bell was rung. It was natural that the dog secreted saliva when he saw the food. The saliva went into the tube and it was measured. The experiment went on for some days. After that, the bell was rung one day, but no food accompanied it. The dog secreted the saliva even then. It was observed that the saliva went on coming in the same quantity with the ringing of the bell for some days. The actual stimulus to bring forth the response, that is the secretion of saliva, was the sight of the food, but it was conditioned in such a way that another stimulus which ordinarily had nothing to do with secretion of saliva began to stimulate it. Food is the natural stimulus as it motivates the dog to respond. His response is secretion of saliva. Ringing of the bell is an artificial stimulus, also called conditioned stimulus. First phase before conditioning. The first part of the classical conditioning process requires a naturally occurring stimulus that will automatically elicit a response. Salivating in response to the smell of the food is a good example of a naturally occurring stimulus. During this phase of the processes, the unconditioned stimulus results in an unconditioned response. For example, presenting food, that is the unconditioned stimulus, naturally and automatically triggers a salivation response, that is the unconditioned response. At this point, there is also a neutral stimulus that produces no effect yet. It is not until this neutral stimulus is paired with the unconditioned stimulus that it will come to evoke a response. The unconditioned stimulus is one that unconditionally, naturally, automatically triggers a response. For example, when we smell one of our favorite foods, we may immediately feel very hungry. In this example, the smell of the food is the unconditioned stimulus. The unconditioned response is the unlearned response that occurs naturally in response to the unconditioned stimulus. In our example, the feeling of hunger in response to the smell of food is the unconditioned response. In the before conditioning phase, an unconditioned stimulus is paired with an unconditioned response. A neutral stimulus is then introduced. Phase 2, during conditioning. During the second phase of the classical conditioning process, the previously neutral stimulus is repeatedly paired with the unconditioned stimulus. As a result of this pairing, an association between the previously neutral stimulus and the unconditioned stimulus is formed. At this point, the once neutral stimulus becomes known as the conditioned stimulus. The subject has now been conditioned to respond to this stimulus. The conditioned stimulus is previously neutral stimulus that, after becoming associated with the unconditioned stimulus, eventually comes to trigger a conditioned response. In our earlier example, suppose that when we smelled our favorite food, we also heard the sound of a whistle. While the whistle is unrelated to the smell of the food, if the sound of the whistle was paired multiple times with the smell, the whistle sound would eventually trigger the conditioned response. In this case, the sound of the whistle is the conditioned stimulus. The during conditioning phase involves pairing a neutral stimulus with an unconditioned stimulus. Eventually, the neutral stimulus becomes the conditioned stimulus. Phase 3, after conditioning. Once the association has been made between the unconditioned stimulus and the conditioned stimulus, presenting the conditioned stimulus alone will come to evoke a response even without the unconditioned stimulus. The resulting response is known as the conditioned response. The conditioned response is the learned response to the previously neutral stimulus. In our example, the conditioned response would be feeling hungry when we heard the sound of the whistle. In the after conditioning phase, the conditioned stimulus alone triggers the conditioned response. Let's take a closer look at 5 key principles of classical conditioning. Acquisition. Acquisition is the initial stage of learning when a response is first established and gradually strengthened. During the acquisition phase of classical conditioning, a neutral stimulus is repeatedly paired with an unconditioned stimulus. As we may recall, an unconditioned stimulus is something that naturally and automatically triggers a response without any learning. After an association is made, the subject will begin to emit a behavior in response to the previously neutral stimulus, which is now known as a conditioned stimulus. It is at this point that we can say that the response has been acquired. For example, imagine that we are conditioning a dog to salivate in response to the sound of a bell. We repeatedly pair the presentation of food with the sound of the bell. We can say that the response has been acquired as soon as the dog begins to salivate in response to the bell tone. Once the response has been established, we can gradually reinforce the salivation response to make sure the behavior is well learned. If the sound of the bell is not followed by the food, it implies that there is no reinforcement. A stage reaches when the dog stops to secrete saliva. This process is called as extinction. Pavlov noted in his experiments that when the spacing of the test trials was increased, the response extinguished rapidly. Sometimes a learned response can suddenly reemerge even after a period of extinction. Spontaneous recovery is the reappearance of the conditioned response after a rest period or period of lessened response. For example, imagine that after training a dog to salivate to sound of a bell, we stop reinforcing the behavior and the response eventually becomes extinct. After a rest period during which the conditioned stimulus is not presented, we suddenly ring the bell and the animal spontaneously recovers the previously learned response. If the conditioned stimulus and the unconditioned stimulus are no longer associated, extinction will occur very rapidly after a spontaneous recovery. Stimulus generalization. According to this principle, if we are conditioned to one thing, that is the bell, then we would be conditioned more or less to all sorts of bells. In the earlier stage of learning by conditioning, the animal responds to a number of stimuli which accompany to exact conditioned stimulus. The response is the greatest to the conditioned stimulus and goes on decreasing to other stimuli which are less similar to the original one. In J.B. Watson's famous Little Albert experiment, a small child was conditioned to fear a white rat. The child demonstrated stimulus generalization by also exhibiting fear in response to other fuzzy white objects, including stuffed toys and Watson's own hair. Stimulus discrimination. Discrimination is the ability to differentiate between a conditioned stimulus and other stimuli that have not been paired with an unconditioned stimulus. For example, if a bell tone were the conditioned stimulus, discrimination would involve being able to tell the difference between the bell tone and other similar sounds. Because the subject is able to distinguish between the stimuli, they will only respond when the conditioned stimulus is presented. Critical evaluation of classical conditioning theory. The major strength of classical conditioning theory is that it is scientific. It is based on actual evidence observed by carrying out controlled experiments. A classic example is the Pavlov's experiment, where he managed his dog to salivate at the sound of a bell. The theory takes a reductionist approach and breaks down complex behavior into smaller parts so that it can be easily studied or scientifically tested. However, there are criticisms to this particular approach. The reductionist approach is considered to lack validity and is argued that it can lead to incomplete explanations. Classical conditioning theory supports nurture over nature. It is incomplete to present behavior solely in terms of nature or nurture. Human behavior is so complex for such direct approach, and it is most likely that any effect on the behavior is due to the interaction between both nature and nurture. One major criticism of classical conditioning is that it struggles to explain why some behaviors are continued and others are stopped, that is becoming unlearned. For example, with classical conditioning, one can teach a dog to drool but cannot teach the dog to roll over. Drooling is an involuntary instinctual reflex. Because all learned behavior must involve a reflex, classical conditioning cannot explain how we learned non-reflex based on behaviors. Another major criticism about the theory is the deterministic approach, which restricts all free will of an individual. The process does not allow any control of the individual over their own reactions such as fear and phobia. The important implications for this approach are that it allows scientists to discover laws which can predict events. But more importantly, it restricts free will and uniqueness of human beings to pave their own destiny. Now try this.